This is Energy Perspectives, a weekly podcast produced in Guyana that delves into the developments unfolding in the world's fastest growing economy.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Energy Perspectives. I'm your host, Kiana Wilberg, a senior energy journalist, and today we're coming to you from the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo, where there are hundreds of participants, one of which we have with us today, and she is the Environmental Economist and Senior Director for Climate and RED Plus attached to the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ms. Pradeepa Bholanath. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Guyana. Thanks for having me.
All right. So we're going to jump straight into our questions. Could you share some of the insights that you have on Guyana's green credentials, and what are some key initiatives that have positioned us to be a leader on environmental conservation?
Well, thanks again, Guyana, for having me on the podcast. Guyana stands out among forest countries for a number of reasons. And I think at this juncture of our development, it's especially important to highlight some of those main standout elements of the Guyana story. Guyana has about 85% forest cover, so 85% of our total landmass, about 18 million hectares, is covered in forest. Also, over the last many decades, at least 4 decades of utilization, we've maintained over 99% of that forest cover. So even with all of the activities on development going on, mining sector, in the forestry sector, infrastructure development, building roads and highways, we have maintained 99% of that forest cover. And over the years of our monitoring of forest cover, it's about 13 years old, that system, we have maintained deforestation rates that are among the lowest in the world. And this stands out for Guyana because it shows that no matter where our development pathway takes us, we remain strong and steadfast in keeping true to what we stood for from the very early days, maintaining our environment, protecting our forest. Over the course of the last perhaps 14 years, our journey has been especially important in terms of balancing economic development and environmental conservation. And a lot of this centers on Guyana's low carbon development strategy. The LCDS is Guyana's development strategy that shows how economic development and environmental conservation could actually happen together. We are now in the second phase of the low carbon development strategy. The first phase ran from 2009 to 2020, and we are now in the second phase that goes from 2021 to 2030.
Wow, thank you. Those are some really outstanding accomplishments on Guyana's part. And we're really happy that you've explained some of those facts for us. Moving on, though, as Guyana advances in its oil sector development, there are many who promote or perpetuate this sort of perspective that, maybe environmental conservation and our green credentials cannot happen side by side with oil and gas. They believe oil and gas will somehow eclipse our green credentials and the gains that we've made. But what are the facts?
The facts show, Guyana, that Guyana, having about 85% forest cover, we store close to 19.5 gigatons, billion tons of carbon dioxide within our forest. And the meaningfulness of that is that no matter what economic pathway is taken, we will remain a predominant net carbon sink, or as some refer to it, a carbon negative country. In practical terms, if I can give an example of what that translates to with reference to the oil and gas sector.
Certainly.
One FPSO in operation emits about 2 million tons of CO2 on an annual basis. On an annual basis, our entire forest sequester, which means take in about 154 million tons of CO2. So you can imagine, just for comparison purposes, if we were to have 10 FPSOs, we currently do not have 10, but if we were to have 10 FPSOs in operation in any annual period, it will be 10 FPSOs by 2 million tons, which is 20 million tons. That is only about 13% of what Guyana's forests sequester on an annual basis.
Wow.
So, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yep.
And science has established those references that we've used for that 154 million tons. So it's not only far from the truth, but we remain an overwhelming net carbon sink and a carbon negative country, even when we were to quadruple the current level of production. I do understand, though, that some may be of the view that economic development should come or sometimes come at a sacrifice to environmental conservation. But that is exactly what Guyana set about to disproving. We want to show, and we have been showing, that we can diversify the economy. We can build a responsible energy sector. We can diversify the energy matrix whilst maintaining our strong environmental credentials and whilst improving the well being of people. We believe they can both coexist. And we've been showing that in terms of how we develop the low carbon development strategy.
Thank you so much. And to conclude, Ms. Bholanath, Guyana's forests are indeed vital to environmental strategies. But could you elaborate on the importance of our forests to the world and Guyana meeting its environmental commitments on that stage?
When we speak about global targets, the one that we've been hearing, and we've heard some of that at the conference here earlier yesterday as well as yesterday afternoon, is this global ambition of net zero by 2050.
Right.
Now, what that really means is that the United Nations has set a target for there to be a decrease in CO2 emissions and greenhouse gas emissions progressively from now to 2050 to a point where it has a net effect where we achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius in terms of global temperatures. Now, for that to happen, there must be reductions in sectors across the world: the transport sector, aviation sector, the agriculture sector. The way that Guyana is positioned in all of that is that protecting our forest is presenting the world with a solution that could contribute and has been contributing to that global ambition. What we've said is if Guyana's forests and other countries that have maintained forests worldwide create actions and develop programs to protect those forests, we are not only protecting, in the case of Guyana, 19.5 billion tons of CO2 from being emitted into the atmosphere, but we are protecting those forests to continue to take in carbon dioxide at a rate of 154 million every year. So the forest is storing and it's working for Guyana and the world. So that contributes to that global ambition. And I believe that one of the standout features of our current LCDS, this second draft, is that it shows that the conversation goes beyond carbon dioxide and it goes beyond looking at greenhouse gases. Right. And it's one that also brings in biodiversity. Guyana has such rich flora and fauna in our forestry resources, and protecting that is an important co-benefit. We have such important watersheds as well, and that is an essential part of our LCDS. And perhaps over and above all of that, carbon dioxide, over and above biodiversity, and over and above water, is the well-being of people. And what we have looked to do in this second phase of the low carbon development strategy is ensuring that the proceeds that come from protecting those forests go directly back to the villages. And over the course of 2023, we have seen close to $22.5 million US go back to individual Amerindian villages. And they're using these resources, these new resources, now to implement projects themselves at the village level that bring about changes in their lives. And I think that is a standout feature of showing how a global ambition could lead to resource generation, could lead to transforming the lives of people.
Ms. Bholanath, I think you have eloquently articulated Guyana's position on the global stage as a leader on green economy and showing and demonstrating to us that it is possible to be a responsible partner when it comes to developing our resources, our oil resources, alongside maintaining our green credentials. So thank you for explaining those points to us and laying bare the real facts. So there you have it. Thanks for joining us and do stay tuned.
Thank you for listening to the Guyana Energy Perspectives podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Register today for the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo, coming to Georgetown, Guyana, February 19 through to 22, 2024.